There are multiple serious conversations that need to happen right now, surrounding Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and the broader media environment covering this situation, and each one deserves honest examination without the institutional deference that has allowed against the Phoenix Mercury. Because the injury report alone raises questions the Indiana have been managing this lower leg situation throughout the current year, playing through it available. And months after the initial injury, she is still carrying a probable designation for a road game. The Indiana Fever training staff has not been a visible point of criticism in the broader media conversation surrounding this franchise. That's affecting multiple roster contributors are not the product of a single unfortunate incident. They reflect systemic organizational infrastructure that either lacks the capacity to handle professional athlete rehabilitation demands or is not applying available resources with adequate effectiveness, now dictating the tempo of her return in ways that generated widespread public criticism. Boston's lower leg situation dates to an earlier season and has persisted through months of the current.
You can make a compelling argument that Caitlin Clark is a top 4 guard in the WNBA. Like, nobody can at this point. That is why she was 11. She got the 11th most votes for being in the top 4. So there's really no controversy about that, because especially when you add in the fact that she is one of the most popular players in the WNBA. She's going to make the All-Star team. That is not the argument here. I think what bothers me is when this is framed as some sort of like petty jealousy or insecurity by these women in the WNBA, because that's not what I'm seeing what's happening with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is experiencing pretty much what happens anytime a young player comes into the league with a lot of hype, especially the hype that she's receiving that says all of these, the whole entire league basically should be thankful that she's there. Whenever this happens in any league, in any sport, in any gender, there is backlash to that, because there are players who are there who are saying, we built this, show me what you got. And they target that player. That happens all the time. Michael Jordan had the freeze out in the Olympics where they would not pass him the ball. LeBron James, when he got in the league and he was the chosen one, they were physical with LeBron James. When we're talking about Wemby right now, we're talking about a guy, the best way to attack him is with physicality and to beat him up. Candace Parker was in the middle of a riot in the middle of a WNBA game in her rookie year because they were attacking her because she was coming in as a prospective GOAT in the league. This happens. Angel Reese, by the way, is somebody who came in with Caitlin Clark, who has experienced flagrant twos, who Alyssa Thomas also basically chokeslammed and threw on the ground last year. Like, this is something that happens across sports. And Caitlin Clark, to her credit, is not somebody who is going out there and begging for something to be done. When this play happened, she got up and ran back to the other side of the court because Caitlin Clark just wants to play basketball. She doesn't want congressional hearings about her being fouled. She doesn't want you to call in the National Guard when there is a foul on her. She wants to play basketball. She wants to deal with the physicality. She just wants it called correctly. And the WNBA has a referee problem where they're not calling these across the board. But this is not some issue where she is a victim of anything. If anything, she is a victim of people using her in bad faith and using her to target these women when Caitlin Clark herself just wants to play basketball.
Well, David, now, commentary that consistently dismisses or unfairly frames the player who built that audience does not serve the commercial interests of any media organization attempting to capture and retain it. ESPN is a commercial enterprise. Its programming decisions and editorial positioning are ultimately accountable to commercial realities. When commentary, directed at the most commercially significant player in women's professional basketball, generates the kind of unified, sustained backlash Dennis's remarks produced today, platform leadership should treat that reaction as meaningful market feedback, rather than noise to be managed and moved past quickly. Candace Parker also addressed the player voting situation this week, specifically the ranking that placed Clark 11th among guards, despite her producing numbers, that no player in league history has sustained for an equivalent period. Parker's public willingness to acknowledge that the player vote does not reflect honest competitive assessment adds institutional weight to an argument that needed more prominent insider validation. When a player of Parker's, standing within the basketball community, says the ranking is not accurate, it shifts the player vote, placing Clark 11th, while she leads in metrics that define guard excellence, is not analytical disagreement between reasonable observers as resting tonight. It saturates every Indiana Phoenix conversation. For the remainder of this season, Clark will not be on the floor in Phoenix. How Indiana performs without her against this Mercury team, whether Boston's probable status translates to meaningful floor time, and whether the coaching staff demonstrates the adaptive decision-making that has been questioned throughout this season, will all be visible and will all contribute to the ongoing assessment of how this organization navigates its most challenging period. The specific curiosity observers are expressing is whether tonight's rotation management shows any evolution from the fragmented approach that generated such criticism yesterday against the Sparks. With Clark removed from the equation in superstars return, that simplification makes the evaluation of coaching decisions more direct and the accountability for those decisions clearer. But here is the larger context that must frame everything. The Indiana Fever are navigating an extraordinarily compressed set of institutional challenges simultaneously. Their best player is recovering from a back injury connected to a high-profile on-court incident that generated national headlines and inadequate institutional response. Their second most impactful player is managing a lower leg injury that has persisted for months and originated in a different urgency they demanded. The training staff question is the one that has gone unasked for too long. When a player sustains an injury in an off-season competition and is still managing it months into the current season, the question of whether that injury was diagnosed with appropriate precision and rehabilitated with appropriate resources is entirely legitimate and entirely necessary. The media covering this franchise has not asked it with the consistency or the specificity it deserves. That needs to change. Tonight in Phoenix, the Fever play without their most important player against the team whose game produced the incident connected to her injury. That context contains every element of the larger story that has defined this season. The institutional failures, the physical consequences, the organizational accountability gaps, the media environment that has not consistently held those gaps to the scrutiny they demand. What Indiana does tonight, how the available roster is managed, whether the coaching staff demonstrates